The Los Angeles Clippers are off to their worst start since the 2010-11 season, the year before the Lob City era began. This team has no direction right now. Lawrence Frank has made so many bad moves for years that I thought nothing would surprise me anymore. That was until the Clippers prematurely ended their franchise legend Chris Paul's farewell season because he was allegedly a toxic presence to the team. I don't care who did what or when, the fact that the Clippers sent him home in the middle of the night while the team was on a road trip on the other side of the country, that means that they lost control of the situation long before any of us knew anything about it. We may never know all the details of the Chris Paul situation, but the backstabbing of players, especially those who played a big role in making the Clippers a relevant franchise, is not a new problem for the team, and now that everyone knows this, it's likely going to hurt them for years to come. What's absolutely insane to me is how they didn't even tell him to his face that they're sending him out. That's the worst way to get rid of a player. He clearly didn't take it well based on his Instagram story that he posted at 3 a.m. in Atlanta, and I don't blame him after everything he's done for the franchise. This isn't the first time Lawrence Frank ever disrespected a franchise legend either. He blindsided Blake Griffin by trading him to the Detroit Pistons on January 29, 2018, much like Chris Paul, without actually speaking to him. This came after he had a meeting with Steve Ballmer and Doc Rivers celebrating his career and acknowledging him as the greatest Clipper ever, and signed him to a 5-year extension with the Clippers the summer before that season began. Chris Paul and Blake Griffin were the ones who put the Clippers on the map. They're the ones who made the Clippers a desirable destination for marquee free agents and made getting their own arena instead of sharing one with the Lakers possible. Now, who knows if either of them want their numbers retired by the Clippers, something the Clippers have never done in the history of their franchise. They both wanted to retire as Clippers, and this is what the organization did to its two most important players in franchise history. Yes, Paul George got them to the conference finals 4 years ago, but neither Paul George nor Kawhi Leonard would have wanted to be Clippers in the first place if it weren't for Lob City. Lawrence Frank has a history with backstabbing other players too. It's just a worse look when you do it to the two most important players in your franchise's history. Lou Williams also had something to say about Lawrence Frank.
I was present when Blake Griffin was traded. My personal situation, this is a person that told me I can relax, I'm not getting traded. 15 minutes later, I was an Atlanta Hawk.
You see a pattern here? Even though the Clippers made their first ever conference finals and Lou Williams helped the Hawks reach the conference finals that season, it still says a lot about how you treat your players, and when other players hear this kind of stuff, it makes them not want to play for you. Lawrence Frank also blindsided Russell Westbrook. At first, it seemed like the Clippers were saving him from a bad situation he was in with the Lakers, but he was traded after a season and a half, even when he picked up his player option to stay in LA where he is from and went to college. Lawrence Frank handed last year's championship and a potential dynasty to the Oklahoma City Thunder by giving up way too much just to get Paul George. He was so desperate for a point guard that he signed John Wall when he was nothing but dead weight for years at that point, instead of prioritizing keeping Isaiah Hartenstein, who is now the last line of defense for OKC, the defending champions and the best defensive team in the NBA right now. He traded for James Harden, who can still score at a high level but hasn't gotten the Clippers out of the first round. Then he traded Norman Powell, who had a breakout year last year, for John Collins, who's been a major disappointment this season. Meanwhile, Norman Powell has been even better with the Miami Heat this season. Lawrence Frank also signed Bradley Beal only for him to have a season-ending injury, and he hasn't been good the last couple of years anyways, and an aging Brook Lopez to be their backup center, he hasn't been any good either. I thought Lawrence Frank needed to go a long time ago, and honestly don't know what more he needs to do to get the Clippers to fire him. If they don't let him go sometime during or after this season, that's just crazy. I understand that Frank is not the only problem, but he is the common denominator as the guy who constructed this team. When the Clippers made that trade with OKC to bring in Paul George, Jerry West, may he rest in peace, may have been heavily involved in the process, and Kawhi is to blame too for blackmailing the Clippers into doing whatever it takes to get PG in order for him to come, but Lawrence Frank enabled the trade to happen. It may have been easier to listen to Kawhi's demands at the time because he was the reigning finals MVP, but PG was already developing a reputation as a playoff choker in OKC. You just had to pay attention to know. Perhaps not too many people would have guessed back in 2019 that Gilgeous-Alexander would become the reigning regular season and finals MVP, who's averaging over 30 points per game for the 4th straight season right now. But SGA showed flashes of becoming a future star as a rookie, even if not consistently. He had the poise of a star player and had 2 20-point plus games in his first ever playoff series against the Warriors when they still had Kevin Durant and were still the clear team to beat in the NBA. Lawrence Frank had the final say and had every right to tell everyone no to trading SGA or to all those draft picks, one of them turning into OKC's second best player, Jalen Williams, but he didn't. Everything else, Lawrence Frank is much more to blame than anyone else for the ineptitude of the Clippers because he is the one who put this retirement home team together. It's being said that Chris Paul had a toxic effect on the team.
It was stuff that kept building up throughout the course of the season. He was doing stuff behind T. Lue's back, going to players, whispering, saying things and causing turmoil when the team is already struggling and going through a lot. The last thing you need is a guy that you brought in to be an extension of the coach, to be a voice, a positive voice in the locker room, to be a negative voice in the locker room.
From everything that I've heard from every other player who's played with him, Chris Paul needs to be the smartest guy in the room. And if he's not, he's going to argue you down.
Maybe, maybe not. You should expect Chris Paul to hold guys accountable for not playing up to their standards. It may be harder to listen to CP3 now that he's a shell of what he used to be. Someone has to speak up though when the team is playing so poorly and this was not supposed to be a rebuilding year. The Clippers can't do that because they still don't have a first round pick until 2030. Kawhi is not the kind of guy who will hold guys accountable because he's too quiet. And James Harden, yeah, he may be one of the greatest scorers of his generation, but when has he ever been known to be a vocal leader? CP3 may have crossed some lines behind the scenes that we don't know about, just what we saw on the court looked like holding guys accountable. Lawrence Frank should not be surprised if Chris Paul crossed any lines though. There's no way that Frank doesn't know Chris Paul's personality from having been a Clippers assistant coach during the Lob City era. For Lawrence Frank to make that statement, we are parting ways with Chris and he will no longer be with the team. We will work with him on the next step of his career. Chris is a legendary Clipper who has had a historic career. I want to make one thing very clear. No one is blaming Chris for our underperformance. I accept responsibility for the record we have right now. There are a lot of reasons why we've struggled. We're grateful for the impact Chris made on the franchise. I'm absolutely not buying that. If you were really grateful for the impact Chris Paul made on the team, then why would you send him home in the middle of the night while the team is on the other side of the country? If you are not blaming him for the team's underperformance, why get rid of him this early in the season? Why was he the first domino to fall if no one is blaming him for the team's underperformance? You didn't even bother to have a face-to-face conversation with him about it and just said, okay, he can kick rocks in the middle of the night. Whatever the problem was, Lawrence Frank and Tyronn Lue lost control of it a long time ago. That's ridiculous to me that Ty Lue wasn't even talking to CP3 for weeks leading up to CP3's release from the team. DeMarcus Cousins has said,
it's starting to become a pattern. I've experienced it. He's been on record talking about, how me and him didn't talk for a while. I saw him do it to Rajon Rondo the same year that we were there. Now you're doing it to Chris Paul. It was rumblings that you did it to John Wall. So it's starting to become a pattern as to how he deals with his players. And it's a big gray area that it's not making sense. And to brand yourself, as a player's coach, you're not really showing those tendencies with these patterns that are continuing to happen.
Well-run organizations can handle difficult players, but even if they can't, the first step should be a suspension during the middle of the day, long before any road trip, not sending them home in the middle of the night while they're on the other side of the country. I am also absolutely siding with Chris Paul on this BS about how he allegedly changed defensive schemes without the coaching staff's permission. Jeff Van Gundy reportedly told CP3 on the team plane, listen, you might have had the leeway in other places places to be able to change up defensive coverages, but you don't have that leeway here. An explanation for CP3 posting that Instagram story where he screenshotted the dictionary definition of leeway. CP3's side of the story, though, was that it was just a suggestion when seeing that Kawhi struggled to stay on Klay Thompson. Anyone who has paid any attention to the Mavericks at all knows Klay is no longer even close to the same player who helped the Warriors win 4 championships as one half of the Splash Brothers. But Klay was torching the Clippers, scoring 17 of his 23 points in that game in the fourth quarter alone. Nico Batum and Chris Dunn struggled to guard Klay, so when it was Kawhi's turn, he ended up fouling the screener. I understand at the end of the day, coaches should have the final say on everything. However, having John Collins switch onto Klay on the screen the very next possession instead of Kawhi staying on him isn't what lost the Clippers a game, so I don't see what the problem was here. Apparently, Chris Paul changed defensive schemes without the coaching staff's permission more than once, and if that's the case, I understand that being a problem, but it shouldn't be unresolvable if the Clippers were a better run organization. Coaches absolutely should have the final say on everything, but players should have a voice too, especially at the highest level. Also, especially when it comes to a franchise legend the fans wanted to see retire with the team he brought out of the gutter of the NBA. Do you know why the Clippers shared the Staples Center with the Lakers for all those years when they never shared the Forum? Because they did not have the resources to build their own arena back in 1999 while moving out of the LA Memorial Sports Arena, which was outdated. The Clippers needed a more modern and revenue-generating venue, which sharing the Staples Center with the Lakers was the only viable option for. The Clippers only became strong enough financially and culturally to build the Intuit Dome because of the impact of Lob City. Everyone who's paid the slightest attention to the Clippers can see at the age of 40, Chris Paul is clearly not what he used to be. Still, he's not the reason this team is losing all these games. He only played 14 minutes per game this season. There is no way in hell that the Clippers were actually depending on him to win games when he's 40 years old and was playing on his 5th different team in the last 7 seasons this year. He was brought back to the Clippers for the purpose of being able to finish his career with a franchise that he got out of the gutter of the NBA. This goes beyond the X's and O's. Before CP3 was traded to the Clippers in December of 2011, the Clippers were seen as a perennial laughingstock, the Lakers' little brother, or LA's JV team. Even to this day, the Lakers are still seen as LA's team over the Clippers because the Lakers are the ones with all the championship banners, retired numbers, and statues. CP3 may have never gotten the Clippers out of the second round of the playoffs, and yes, he deserves a share of the blame for their shortcomings in the playoffs, but the Clippers rarely ever even made the playoffs to begin with before his arrival. Just once since 1998 to be exact before Lob City. The Clippers were just 14th in average fan attendance the year before Chris Paul's arrival. Even with more affordable tickets than the Lakers, they jumped to 7th the year CP3 arrived, the beginning of Lob City, and were never outside of the top 10 in average fan attendance again during the Lob City era. CP3 is the one who opened the door for the Clippers to reach heights they've never reached before, and many people, not just people in Southern California, became Clippers fans because of CP3 and Lob City. The Clippers destroyed the one thing these fans had anything to look forward to in what has been a disastrous season for their franchise legend to ride off into the sunset as a Clipper. I'm not going to say Lawrence Frank is the only problem. Steve Ballmer is the one who put him in charge and has allowed him to overstay his welcome. Tyronn Lue has probably overstayed his welcome as the head coach, not having been out of the first round in 4 years, going to be 5 this season unless some miraculous turnaround happens. Kawhi Leonard and James Harden are not getting any younger. Kawhi is also not available enough, something that's hurt the Clippers throughout his time with them. He's no longer the lockdown defender who won back-to-back Defensive Player of the Year awards and won Finals MVP in 2014 because of his defense on LeBron. James Harden can still get buckets, but he wasn't even a good defender in his younger years, so why expect him to be one now? He also still over dribbles and does nothing off the ball, which made him a perennial playoff choker when he was at his peak in Houston. Steve Ballmer needs to wake up and fire Lawrence Frank if he doesn't want his team to continue to rot. If I have to choose who has to go between Lawrence Frank and Ty Lue, and it can't be both. Lawrence Frank all the way, because Ty Lue has never been given a fully healthy roster throughout his time coaching the Clippers, and Lawrence Frank is the one constructing the team only for it to crash every single year. That's it for this video. What do you make of this saga, and where do you think Chris Paul will finish his career? Please let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like to get this out to more people. Please consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you never miss out. If you're a new subscriber, welcome to the team. Links to my social media are down below in the description for my more immediate reactions to what's going on in the sports world. If you're already subscribed, thanks so much for your support as always. If you'd like to see my most recent video or the one that YouTube recommends, both are up above. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you next time.